His work has supported individuals with disabilities through assessments, training, and advocacy. He has also contributed to accessible voting as a project coordinator for Elections New Brunswick and currently chairs Avenue NB Cooperative. His dedication has earned him several honors, including the Disability Awareness Week Provincial Award 2017, recognition from the Learning Disability Association of New Brunswick in 2020, and the CAOT Citation Award in 2023. In 2021, he completed the Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt certification for nonprofits, further strengthening his impact in the field. So put your hands together to welcome Charles to give us a presentation on empowering accessibility and productivity with AI. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. Can you guys hear me okay? Audio is fine, and you see my PowerPoint, so we'll get started, I guess. Um, I realize now that I'm looking at my PowerPoint slide, I forgot to change my title to match the title of today's event, but I did change some of the slide to reflect the type of work you guys do and so on. So it's been modified. It's an AI presentation that I've been building over almost 3 years now, really, that I keep recycling it and modifying it, and it's up to date too, because I make sure that all the latest technology that we see happening from year to year is being implemented when I do my presentation. So we'll give it a go. We'll start, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate. You could raise your hand, or even speak up. And I'm not sure how you guys are set up, if it's a webinar type of technology, if you have a Q&A and all that, but we'll answer the question as we go along there. So okay, I like AI. I use AI all the time, and I ask AI to come up with a joke, and I wanted to see if AI was funny, and basically that's what he came up with. And I said, come up with a joke about assistive technology specialists, because that's what I do, right? So he came up with the technology. How many assistive technology specialists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is none. If the environment is accessible, the light bulb will change itself, right? Which I thought was pretty, not really funny, but pretty accessible, So I thought it was a good answer from AI for coming up with a joke. Okay, first of all, Neil Squire. I always like to introduce Neil because I've been working for this organization since 2002. But Neil basically is the person the organization is named after, and this is Neil back in 1980. Basically, he was 21 years old at the time. He had a car accident. He sustained a C1 brainstem injury, and he was paralyzed from the neck down, right? So big complication after the accident. So that's before, a picture that is before the accident. This is a picture of Neil after the accident. So obviously you could tell that he's in a wheelchair. He's quite paralyzed. He can't really use his arm. And in fact, he's got to use his sip and puff to operate a computer. Okay. And this computer, this is like early 1980s. This picture was taken in 1981, actually. And basically, in order for him to be able to use a computer, first of all, you had to learn how to use a computer, because back in 1981, nobody, the computers were not everywhere. Not everybody was using a computer. But also, we had to create technology for him to be able to use technology. So in other words, he was using a sip and puff. But how did that translate to characters on the screen? Well, they combined the sip and puff with Morse code. And if you're familiar with Morse code, it's like the dot, 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 dash, 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 dot, dot, dot type of language, that people use to communicate, over the radio wave, or the telegraph back in the old days with the train and all that, right? But basically, this technology is only two characters. It's a dot and it's a dash. So what they've done, what the group at Neil Squire at the time done, they combined this sip and puff, which is two function, sip and a puff, with a dot and a dash. So a sip was the dot and the puff was the dash. And then Neil was able to learn Morse code and then communicate on through a screen, right? By sipping and puffing the code, the computer can then translate that to text, right? That was very early AI functionality that we built in the computer back then. And what happened, of course, is this technology grew. And after Neil passed away from complication not too long in 1984. So he used the technology for a few years, but then we wanted to make sure this technology can be used by other people. So we came up with the Neil Squire Society. That's when the society was actually created. So we could bring that across Canada and serve people with disability on using all kinds of technology. So this was an example. We also had a robot to turn page, brush your hair, to move a cup of water so that Neil could drink. There was all kinds of technology created at the time. So all those technology were then brought to the rest of Canada through the Neil Squire Society that was created back then. Now, what we do today, today's picture of the Neil Squire Society is still the same. We still do innovation, right? But we do an awful lot of digital literacy training, also employment program, a lot of assistive technology program, and we do an awful lot of collaboration as well. Because we believe that what we have, what we know, we should share it. We want to share it with everybody. Make sure that everybody could benefit from using this technology and so on. So collaboration is big for us. So that's about Neil. Now let's talk about AI. So let's understand what is the promise of AI. What's the whole point about this AI thing? And to me, and for many people, I think the promise is that we're gonna have more time for ourselves, right? To me, like if I want to do a task and if I do it the old-fashioned way, then it's gonna take me longer than if I do it with AI, you know? And I started working in the 80s myself. That's when I really began my career. And I was studying accounting at the time, and everything was done manually. So bookkeeping, everything was done through a ledger. We had to take pencils and, make sure that everything was done properly, double accounting entries and so on. Eventually, all these accounting practices that I learned when I went to university um, sort of went the digital approach, right? We started doing that on the computer. And then it became much faster to do, to enter information, much faster to calculate, and much faster to be able to get the information you're looking for, get your report that you want, right? It's kind of like that with AI, is you have things you want to do, right? And you're basically going to be able to do it better or faster. Not necessarily better, but faster with AI. So to me, that's the number one promises. The other one is enhance efficiency and productivity. Where we're just going to be more productive because we can do things faster. We can technically do more, right? And we're more efficient at it, right? So, and it's especially true with the repetitive tasks, things that we have to do repeatingly, then why not automate that stuff, right? And that's what AI allows us to do. So some industries like manufacturing obviously will use that. Logistic, customer service, those are all gonna be using some kind of an AI-driven automation. Smarter decision making. I'm going to show you a couple examples today. Let's say you want to buy a phone, a cell phone, and you don't know which one you want to buy. Well, AI can help you with that because you could compare two products very easy with AI. And it's kind of neat because you could ask AI to compare it and put the features side by side in a table format, right? Like how much memory, what's the camera like, what's the cost even, it's very neat. It does a great job at it. So to me, instead of calling up the salesperson at Bell or Rogers or wherever you're going to buy your cell phone from, I'm going to go to my AI. I'm going to have a conversation with AI way before I go to the store. So when I get to the store, I know what I want because I already researched it. I could have done the same thing with Google, but not as efficiently because Google will give you all kinds of results. You'll get advertisement, you'll get sites of people that claim they know stuff, but they don't really know stuff. With AI, you'll get the real information right away, right? So to me, it's a save of time. Improve education and learning. If I want to learn something new, I go to AI. Yes, I still use YouTube quite a bit. I watch a lot of videos on how to do stuff. But sometimes I like to go to AI and ask specific questions. And we'll do that today. We'll talk about the computer. For example, there's a feature that's not kind of interesting, but people don't really know how to do it. Like if you send an email, but then you want to recall that email because you say, oh, I forgot to add something. I didn't say it properly, right? And I don't know how to recall an email. Well, AI knows how to recall an email. So we'll ask AI, right? So all these things, that's education, say how to do things, right? Language translation, we use that a lot, right? I was teaching a course the other day, and it was a lot of French people, English people, and Spanish people all in the same class. And the French and English, they were not too problematic for them to understand what I was saying. But the Spanish people were really Spanish. They came from South America. I forget which country, but they really had a hard time with my accent and understanding what I'm saying. But they turned on their cell phone, and their cell phone was translating everything I was saying to them, right? Using an AI application. And I'm glad to report that at the end of the course, and there was a test at the end of the course for that one, and they all passed the test, no problem, because they were able to get the information that they needed. Well, so language barrier, not too much of an issue anymore, which is a bonus, right? What else? Solving global challenge. AI can optimize energy use, improve climate modeling. I don't know much about that aspect because I don't work in that area, but it would be nice if the people in charge of climate change and all that stuff probably should be using AI. Whether they are or not. I'm sure they are in some capacity, right? Their modeling obviously is probably based on um, AI tools and so on, right? Food security, disaster response, right? All this can be benefited by using some kind of AI, especially with the predicting of natural disaster, because we get a lot of those. Seems that it's getting worse and worse every year, right? So, um, enhance creativity and innovation. You know, AI can assist, and notice I'm using the word assist in art, music, writing, and design, expanding human creativity. There's an awful lot of people that are using AI to create art, music, and writing, and design, and videos, and all that. I don't like that as much myself. I don't want AI to create stuff. I like AI to assist in creation, right? Like people are creating fake videos now. They're using AI the wrong way, right? It's like anything, you got a great tool, but you use the tool the wrong way, you know, like hackers are using AI now to go after us and try to steal our money and all that, right? And that to me is a bad example of using AI, but it's happening and we have to be aware of it. So be very careful when you receive a call from somebody that you think it might not be that person at all. It might be somebody that used AI and stole your voice somehow, and they created something that sounds like you or looks like you. The videos you could usually tell because, you could tell that's not the way this person speak, that's not the way this person moves. But when it's just an audio, then it's harder to tell, right? Um, Ethical and societal improvement, can help reduce human bias in hiring policies, right? If it's designed properly, of course. AI governance framework can ensure fairness, transparency, and accountability. right? And for us, person with disability, that's important for us because I mean, if we're looking for employment, we don't want them to see our disability first. We want them to see our skills, right? And that's what we should be promoting is the skills, right? So, and of course with AI, then AI can be trained to look at the skill set, to look at certain things that will give you a fair chance, right? And to me, that can be done quite easily. Now, there's other promises like medicine, breakthrough in medicines, economic growth, job creation, better human machine creation, democratization of knowledge and services, Um, so to me, those are promises. And the most important one for me is information is power, right? If the information is kept by only a few people that obviously control everything, that's not helping us, right? That's not helping the whole society. We need to have access to the information. Everybody should have access to the same information. And with AI, we can actually maybe understand that information better. We need to process it, obviously. But I could ask AI to take a document, like a contract from a lawyer, for example, and summarize it in words that I can understand, right? So that is important, because I don't read, I don't speak lawyer terminologies, right? I don't understand what they say. But if I just bring that document to my AI and then I can ask question to AI, so it's like having somebody I can talk to. And that person or that technology would explain things in words that I would actually understand. So that gives me access to information, right? So a lot of people say, AI is going to replace humans, it's going to take over our jobs and all that stuff. And there's some truth to that, and there's still a lot of deep debate, people talking about it. Um, and I'll be honest with you, I don't want to spend too much energy on that because, we have to make sure that we prepare for this new future, right? Because it's obvious to me that the future that we're going into is not the future that we know today, right? As I said, when I was in school, there was no computers. When I started in university, they were computers, but we didn't really use them. We did manual accounting still, right? Um, you don't do manual accounting anymore, right? So therefore, everything changed. Well, it's the same thing with this AI stuff. The AI of today is not going to be the AI of the future, that's for sure. But one thing is for sure, and that's true today, and I think it's going to continue to be true in the future, is collaboration between human and AI will redefine the work and the productivity. Okay? So it's going to augment the human performance, right? We need to evolve our skills though, right? Because we need to be able to understand the AI and use it properly. So I guess it's fair to say that humans with AI experience will replace humans without AI experience, right? So that's kind of the way we have to look at it today. Okay. Of course, you'll hear it. We hear it in our schools. We'll hear it everywhere. It's not ethical. There's privacy issue with AI. And all that is true. We have to make sure that we protect ourselves, that we protect the information. Um, but one thing is for sure, right? We have to make sure that we pick the right tools. Okay, let me expand on that here for a second. When you gonna use an AI or any type of digital platform, whether it's email, cloud for your files, all that stuff, then you always worry about your data. Okay. So you have to pick a company that is worried about that as well, right? So in Canada, we have the PIPEDA, PIPEDA, right? It's Privacy Information Act for digital information, right? So we need to make sure that the company that we use follows the PIPEDA guidelines, right? In the state, they have another one called HIPAA, HIPAA, I think it's spelled. Same concept, right? Internationally, there's a standard called GDPR. I don't really know what it stands for, but if you Google it, or if you look, ask AI, it'll tell you, right? So basically, those are things that I look for when I pick technology. If the company doesn't know anything about those, I don't use that tool, right? A good example of that would be Facebook or Meta. Then they don't follow any of that, all right? But Microsoft does. Microsoft makes sure that, whenever they create a product, that they follow in order for them to operate in the Canadian market, they have to follow these Canadian rules and regulations and guidelines. Google does as well. Apple does as well. Like the big companies, usually we have no problem with. Now, ChatGPT doesn't. ChatGPT is not really too worried about these things. And of course, the big one now, DeepSeek, which comes from China, great technology. I love it. It works good, but it's not following any of that. All right. So personally, I do not use ChatGPT and I do not use DeepSeek. I'll play with them from time to time to make sure I know what they're like. But for my information, I'll use basically Microsoft, which is Copilot, really. We'll talk about that in a minute, and Google, which is Gemini. Those are the two AI tools that I focus the most on. And the same thing with the local storage. My local storage, we use the cloud now, right? Everything is on the cloud. But for us at work at Neil Squire, it's Microsoft 365 or M365 cloud. And personally, I use the Google cloud. I know some people will use the iCloud, which is the Apple one. That's fine too, right? But whatever you use, make sure that you can trust that company, okay? And again, DeepSeek, which just came in not too long ago, they they seem to be the best at doing AI better than the other ones. But again, is that is that worth putting your information onto that platform? For me, it's not. I want to stay protected. So I'll go with the companies that I can trust. We have to be transparent when using AI. I think that's important, because in other words, if I'm writing something, but I'm asking AI to do most of the write-up, I shouldn't take the credit, right? I shouldn't go to school and write a homework or get AI to write a homework and hopefully that the teacher will pass me, like whether it's post-secondary, like if you're studying to become I don't know, a nurse or a doctor, like we need people that knows what they're doing, right? We don't want people that just get the work done by others, including AI, right? It's kind of, to me, that's transparency, right? Um, Bias awareness. We want to make sure that the AI, the output we get from AI will be societal bias, right? And of course, empowerment, not replacement. That means a lot to me. Um, the Microsoft version of AI is called Copilot. They picked the word Copilot because they didn't want an autopilot. In other words, they didn't want the AI to be seen as the one driving the plane or driving the car. You see what I mean? They wanted to be seen as a tool to help you. So Copilot is the perfect word for that technology. So it's not a replacement. It's there to enhance you. Okay, so to me, that's very important. So best practice, just to summarize what I just said so far, you're going to use AI as a co-pilot, not as an autopilot. You're gonna review what you generate with AI. If you get AI to generate something for you, read it and correct it because sometimes it does make mistakes. We'll talk about that more at the end there. But use tools that got the privacy policies, they're very clear about it, and that they have an ethical AI commitment. And we see that with those large companies. We don't, well, Facebook is a large company, or Meta, I should say, but their business plan is different, right? They're not about um they're not about privacy. They're not about all that stuff. For them, is they just want to basically, get people to share data with everybody, and if you put photos on their Facebook, then they own it and all that stuff, right? That's not clear privacy. It's obviously the opposite, right? So, um, another one that would be considered a um, a dangerous sort of tool for me, and everybody's using it, is Twitter, which is now X, right? To me, that's not a good tool that will protect you. They don't have the clear privacy policy in mind. Now, one thing, I put my name to this because I did ask AI who wrote this, and they couldn't come up with anybody, so I put my name on it. But because I believe in it, right? Becoming efficient with technology requires experiment. I can't say it. Requires experimentation. In other words, if you want to be good with technology, you got to try it. You got to play with it. If you don't, if you want to be good at playing a sports, you got to practice it. If you want to learn swim, you got to practice it. If you want to become a writer, you got to practice writing. You know, Same thing with everything. If you want to be a good cook, you got to practice cooking. You know, to me, it's all the same. Technology is no different. If you want to be good with technology, you got to practice it. So that's something to remember, which is why I like to play with AI, because it allows me to become better at it, right? Okay, so now we're just starting here, really, with AI. Let me go to the next one. I'll explain. There's four ways to categorize AI. Well, there's probably more, but I use those four ways. Or like, if we look from a capability point of view, where are we today with AI? Do we have super intelligent computers? No, we do not. Is the AI that we have today super intelligent? No, it is not. It is very narrow. It's not even intelligent at all. The word AI is confusing because it's not intelligence. It's basically just a database. It's basically algorithm. It doesn't really do things that an intelligent human would. So we're not there yet. So in terms of capability, AI is very narrow. It looks like it does more than it does. In terms of functionality, we have reactive AI as opposed to self-aware AI or theory of mind AI. We don't have those two. Self-aware, like AI cannot say, oh, it's hot, I need to go and drink some water, something like that, right? AI cannot say that. It can be programmed, if there's a certain degree temperature and you have a sensor in the device, and sure, there's things you can do to program it, but by itself, it cannot do that. So it's very reactive, right? In other words, if you do have that sensor and then the AI realized, oh, it's getting hotter, then that could trigger a program. But that's reactive. That's not self-aware. That's completely different things, right? It does have limited memory. And it's got limited memory because it's expensive, you know? If you want to have more memory, you got to pay for it. And it becomes quite expensive. I've seen some of the AI that we can buy, and that's true for ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Copilot, Gemini. You could have the free version or you could have the paid version. Well, you'll get different features, and you'll get limited memory for the free version, and you'll get a bit more memory if you start paying for it, right? So those are limitation, obviously. In terms of techniques, they're pretty much all there. Like we have robotics, yeah, that exists today. We have natural language processing, we have deep learning, we have machine learning. That's all there. And in terms of application, it's all there. Computer vision, speech, automation, generative AI, that exists today. Computer vision, it's basically face recognition, object recognition. Those exist. And they're useful, for if a person that is blind, and you have the glasses that's connected to your cell phone, right? And these glasses will see somebody coming in towards you. It can actually tell you who that person is. Even if you can't physically see it, AI can actually connect the face to a contact in your system. And if it cannot connect it to a contact in your system, then they'll say, okay, a man is approaching, a woman is approaching, or something like that. It can say stuff like that, right? Or, you know, an individual. So the future, and this is where we're going, the future of AI is agentic AI, right? And what that means is basically it's a system that can operate autonomously to make decision and take action to achieve goals and minimal human intervention at this time. Okay. So they're designed to be proactive and not just reactive. Right? So it's based on autonomy, it's goal oriented, it's based on decision making abilities, adaptabilities. It can actually quite adapt easily, and it's going to execute some kind of function based on that. So this is where it's going. Okay, and you're going to see the push here. It's with the agents. So they're going to be new AI agents coming out. Okay. One that came out recently, it's the Auto GPT. The Devin is another one. And of course, your personal assistants are approaching that capabilities, right? Um, so those are what's happening now. You know, are we there yet? No, we're working on it, right? So, what's an AI agent? Well, basically, it's some kind of a software or an app or a tool, right, that can actually do those autonomous function. Okay, and it's being developed. So I mentioned those are the goals here. I'll skip that. Auto GPT is one of the most popular one today, I think. Um, and basically, it execute multi-step like market research and all that stuff, right? So it can do some of that. The programmers will basically start putting those agents into their software, right? Or into their technology. Devin was created for programmers. So if you guys are interested in programming at all, then you want to look at that one. And of course, your personal AI assistant. Of course, I'll be talking about some of them coming up, but it's your Siri, right? Your Alexa, your Google, right? And so on. Now, these are the big players in AI, DeepSeek. I didn't put them in any order, really. I just put them in 1, 2, 3, 4 area. I shouldn't really put a number to that, really, because that looks like one is better than the other. But no, um, they're all very similar in terms of functionality. The only difference for me is that number 3 and number 4 are probably more safe. I feel more comfortable using 3 and 4 than I do using 1 and 2. Okay. But it depends. I do use number 2 from time to time because, if you want to do it a little bit of programming and you want to do some Python programming, then there's a Python GPT, right? And I could actually go there, and it's very focused on programming. And a digital assistant, those are the one that I mentioned earlier. Microsoft's got Cortana, but not sure if anybody's using it. There's Alexa that's popular. The Google Assistant is now called Gemini, so they replaced that with Gemini. Apple Siri still around, and for those that use Samsung, well, Bixby is the big one, right? Which I don't have much experience with, but it's there. You could use a multimodal approach with AI, right? Which is what we'll do today. You could do text, text is the number one way for people to interact with the technology. But you can also do audio, right? And audio, it depends on what you're doing. If you're talking to the AI, yeah, sometimes it'll work. But if you're bringing up an audio file and you want AI to analyze the audio file, well, you can, but you have to pay for that feature. It's not in the free ones, in other words. Same thing with video, okay? But image, yeah, you could take an image, and I have a friend of mine who's blind, and he works, and part of his work is to to document linguistic complaints for the federal government. And basically, people are walking around and they're seeing, okay, well, that sign should be in French, but it's only in English. So they'll take a picture of the sign and then they'll send it to him. And he's blind, so he's going to get the picture, but he's going to bring the picture into Copilot, and Copilot will describe the image. And that's how he knows, oh yeah, there's a problem with that image, right? There's a problem with that sign. And then he could document the complaint in the system and so on, right? So it's got great technology and it allows a blind person to be able to do work like that. Now there's all kinds of additional tool. The Google Alert is, to me, if you don't have one, you should use it. Because instead of like if let's say you're interested in I don't know, you want to become a programmer or you want to become an engineer or something, and you could create a Google alert about that, right? And and then you could basically receive an email every time there's new research being done on the topic, right? And then you get information. So it's not just about research, but it could be any type of posting that makes sense. Scholar.google.ca, it's mainly for researchers and so on. But the chat PDF, I want to show you that one. And the notebook LM, I want to talk about that. So these two, I'll definitely show you after my PowerPoint here. So organizational tool, in addition to AI, right? Well, there's tools that are not necessarily AI driven, but they have AI features built in, right? So OneNote's got that, OneDrive's got it, Google Drive's got it, um, mymind.com, obsidian.md, xtiles.app, they're all do. And those tools allows you to organize your information. And I would say even more than that, for me, without my OneNote, I'd be such a disorganized person, right? It's more than just having my calendar. I need my calendar. I don't think I could work without a calendar. I couldn't do, it's not even work. It's even live without a calendar because, if I plan to go see my friend on the weekend, I know like that I'm going to see my friend on August 23rd, I put in my calendar so I don't book anything else. So to me that is perfect. Doctor's appointment, dentist, that all goes in the calendar. But my information, I can't always put that in the calendar. Like OneNote, for example, if I go see my doctor and the doctor asks me, what's your medication again? I just bring up my OneNote on my cell phone and I look at medication because I got a page for that and I read it. It's right there. It's always with me. I don't like paper. All right. To me, why don't I like paper? Well, I mean, a lot of reasons. I'm not a good writer per se. I can type, but my handwriting's not good. Um, and in terms of information, if I want to go somewhere, if it's paper, I got to bring everything with me. I got to make sure I bring that piece of paper that's important. If it's on my phone, it's always with me, right? I got my phone everywhere I go, no matter what. And if the information I'm looking for is on the phone, then perfect, right? So that's done. I mentioned paid versus unpaid. Well, the free AI tool, it's good for beginners, so don't worry about it. If you don't want to pay for it, no, you don't have to. You can use the free ones. Um, and it's basically for hobbyists, right? Those with tight budget. And you can explore the AI feature without financial commitment. So it's a great way to try and learn. Now, the paid one, then obviously they require an investment. So if you're working somewhere and your organization is paying for Microsoft 365, they're probably going to include Copilot in that package. So therefore, you're probably going to have Copilot at the workplace. Okay. And if your organization that you're working with is using the Google suite of product, like the Google Docs and the numbers and all these different type of technology, Google Drive, then you're probably going to have Gemini as part of that technology, right? So if you have a Pixel cell phone, Gemini comes with it because again, Gemini is Google. What else we got? Okay, this is a feature comparison, right? Gonna skip a lot of that, but basically what I want to show you the next slide here is that tokens, okay? You're gonna hear that word a lot when you go to AI, but tokens, like if you have a word like chat GPT, which is really two words brought together, that's two token. All right, so a token is about, 4 or 5 letters, characters. That's basically what a token is if you look at it. So, and if I go back to this one, the max, and that's the free version, the chat GPT is 32,000 tokens. Right, Gemini is 128,000 tokens. There's Claude AI, that's 200,000 tokens. Right, DeepSeek is 128, and Copilot, the free one, it's only 4,000 to 32,000 tokens. That's why you have limitation with AI, because if you're not paying for it, you're limited in the amount of words that you can interact with. Okay. Now you're going to say, well, that's a lot of words, 32,000 words. Not really. When you start using it, there's a lot of word that gets generated and it goes by real fast. Because usually when I use my I have conversation back and forth with it. Okay. Um, I'll skip some of that because I want to go to the demo. One thing is we have to learn how to talk to AI. Okay. I use the expression giggle, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't ask the right question, you're going to end up with the wrong answers, right? Or not useful information, right? So, for example, if I want to search for technology to take notes, there's a couple ways to write that, in AI. What technology can I use for note taking in school? That's one way. And you're going to get some answers. But if you ask it this way, you're going to get some better answers. I have dyslexia and dysgraphia. What assistive technology can I use for note taking in school? Right? To me, that's a better way of asking. Okay. And I'll give you some tips on this next slide there. When you're asking something from AI, be clear, be very specific. Okay. When I start sometime, I'll even say, you know, um, I live in New Brunswick, Canada, right? So I actually explain where I live because a lot of time AI will find some answers, but it's going to be answers for the States. All right. Well, I'm in New Brunswick, Canada. I don't care what's happening in the States. I want to know what's happening in New Brunswick, Canada. All right. So I'm putting both boundaries, right? I'm putting actually boundaries here. Use context, ask open-ended questions, like don't ask a yes and no questions, right? Iterate and refine. So if you're going to get an answer, make sure that you understand it. If not, ask for clarification, right? Set constraint, use example, right? Be polite and courteous, leverage AI strength and feedback loop. So feedback is you can actually say, okay, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Let me clarify and then be more specific, right? Don't be afraid to use this as a conversation when you're working with AI, okay? Um, I'm going to be moving to the demos in just a second, but there's a deep seek feature or deep think feature that's part of DeepSeek. There's a reason feature that's part of ChatGPT, and there's a deep research feature that's part of Gemini. Make sure you use that from time to time. Sometimes I don't use it all the time, but I'll show you an example of how you want to use that. Okay. So let's take a look at the demo here. Let me get out of this for a second. I'm going to reshare my screen, but this time I'm going to share the AI tools. And I got two. We'll start with Copilot. Okay. So let's say I want to look for a cell phone. Oh, do you guys see my Copilot? It says, what can I help you with then?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, because sometimes when I switch, I get an error message. Okay, so I want to buy a cell phone. Okay. Can you compare the Pixel 9, let's say, with the iPhone. Not sure what version we have on iPhone. I'll go with 16. I think that's one of the latest. iPhone 16, and compare the results in a table format. Okay. So that's basically my prompt, right? I'm asking a question. I press this. It's going to do the search, and I get my table because I asked for a table format, right? And you just give it a second, and then you'll be able to go down and read, okay? So if I look at it quickly, the release date, fine, the operating system, 12 gig, 8 gig, and so on, right? So at the end, it even gives you a summary, at Pixel 9, Excel and RAM, battery life and camera visibility, where the iPhone offer more compact build, better GPU performance, and deeper integration with iOS, whatever. If you don't have a clue what GPU means, okay, well, what do you mean with GPU performance? Right? Because you're having a conversation here. And then it explains to you what GPU is. Okay. Now, one thing he didn't say is the price. Can you add the price in Canadian dollars to the table? Again, it's about having a conversation and getting down to really, getting the information you're looking for, right? So the release date, and see, it put the price somewhere. Here it is. Ooh, pricey. Should have picked other phones. I guess those are the top two. All right. So, but you see the conversation concept, right? It's right there. Now that is basically with Copilot. If I go to Gemini quickly, it looks very similar. Okay. Now I'm going to do something else, a different types of conversation, but it's going to be the same concept. Okay. So let's see what we want to do. I need to prepare for a presentation on, let's pick a topic here. Let's say we want to do a presentation on what? Somebody can suggest a topic? Could be a hobby that you have, could be work that you're looking for.
Gardening.
Gardening. Let's be more specific. Gardening what? Like a vegetable
Gardening.
garden?
Hmm.
Okay. Gardening vegetables. What should I include in my presentation? Okay. And then I could put a question mark. Okay. So here are some topics. Why garden vegetables? Planning your vegetable garden. That's number 2. Right. And I'm skipping here because of time here, but site selection, choosing what to grow, right? Soil, soil preparation, watering, and all that stuff, right? So I got 5, 6, I got basically 6 high-level topics that I can use to build my presentation with, right? In fact, this could become my PowerPoint slides, right? If you look at it, right? If you're paying for the version of the software, like if this was Copilot, I could ask it to transfer that to PowerPoint. And then your PowerPoint would be, I don't want to say create it because it would be an awful lot of blank pages, but your headings would be done, right? And then you could go and fill that out, right? But then you got some tips and so on. Okay. So I'll um, go back to Copilot for a second. Okay. So I'm gonna use a Copilot as a coach. Okay. I need to um, give a lecture in front of my class, wherever I often struggle speaking in public. Do you have any advice on what I can do to be able to deliver successfully? I mean, the choice of word, obviously those are my choice of word. You may ask the same question differently, and that's okay. It's however you want to ask it, right? I press the arrow, and then basically it'll give me, okay, well, these are tips, right? It says absolutely public speaking can be nerve-wracking, but with the right strategies and preparation, you can deliver a confident, successful lecture. Okay. Know your material, structure your talk clearly, practice out loud, prepare visual aids, and then how to manage anxiety, breathe and pause, positive visualizations, start strong, accept nervousness. During the lecture, I'll speak slowly and clearly, make eye contact, and so on and so on. After the lecture, reflect on what you've done. So to me, it's more than just a research tool. It's a coach. Like when I use a cell phone example, it was a subject matter expert talking to me, right? Somebody that knows about cell phone would give me information about the cell phone. In this case, it's basically a coach that you probably pay tons of money if you actually hire somebody to coach you on this, right? You get it for free as part of the AI, as long as you don't mind the interaction, because the interaction is required, you know. But to me, it works. I love it, and it gives me the tips, and then I practice what it says. I mean, it's a coach. Again, it's like the comment about technology. If you want to be efficient at public speaking, you got to practice it, right? So the same concept applies for any type of topic. But this allows me to get some good tips on how to do certain things. Okay. Um, and the other one I want to show you is that, I'm going to go back and start a new chat on both there, because you could start a new chat anytime you want. Okay. Now, the Copilot, basically you just type. Okay. Where the other one, you could type, but you got to deep research. Okay. So I could ask question, you know, basically, can you give me information on how to get my driver's license? Let's say I'm going to pick that because I'm not sure what else to pick. In New Brunswick, Canada. But that maybe you have a kid that wants to pass their license, or maybe it's yourself, or so on. All right. So instead of clicking the arrow this time, I'm going to do a deep research. I'm going to activate this feature here. Right. And I'm going to press the arrow after. Now, I don't do that all the time because it takes longer. Okay. And then basically what it's going to do, here's a research plan. So this time the AI will come up with a research plan. Okay. And then basically ask you, is that what you want to do? And I'm going to say, yeah, that's it. I could edit the plan, or I could say start research. And I'll start the research, and it's probably going to take 2 or 3 minutes. before you get the information from the AI, but it's gonna be well researched, right? So it's not just a quick answer this time. Like when you're comparing two cell phone, yeah, you don't need the deep research. But if you're searching for something, usually from a government website, which is hard to find information on, then yeah, the deep research makes sense, you know. Um, anything. I mean, if I don't, I'm not a doctor. I don't understand anything about medicine, but if I do have a medical question and I ask I would probably do a deep research, right? Because that to me is more than than. Um, so I think it's 2 o'clock there, so we're probably close to the end. The other one I want to just finish with notebook element. Not gonna have a chance to give you a demo on this one there, but basically there is a try. Let me just go in and see if I can activate it. Okay. There's a feature here. For example, I could create new and I would basically put a website here. Okay, I would actually put a website and the website, and I'll just cancel it and show you the one I already done instead. I put Neil Squire website. Basically, what it did is summarize it for me. Okay. But also it created an audio overview. And this audio overview is an actual podcast. And it's a podcast of the website. And it's only 15 minutes long. It's not a very long podcast, but it talks about the website. It talks about, in this case, the Neil Score site, because that's the site I put in. So imagine you're looking for a job, and you're going somewhere and you want to work for this company, but when you're preparing for the interview, right, you have to read the website. Well, sometimes reading a website can be hard. So I would use Notebook LMN and I would put the website in there, and then it would create a podcast, a 15, 20-minute podcast you can listen to in order to prepare for the interview, right? Because it's another way to present the information, right? So to me, it's worth trying. If you have a chance, I definitely recommend that you try the Notebook LM. I don't know the company if their privacy is good, but you're not using it for your private information. You're using it for listening to other people's website, right? In the podcast format. Okay. So I think that takes us to the hour. You have any questions, anybody? If not, I'll just summarize and, Copilot, you should use it. Give it a try. If you have an Outlook or Outlook.com email address, that basically would be the one you want to go with because it's connected with Microsoft, right? If you're using Gmail, if you have Pixel phone, if you're using Chrome a lot, then Gemini seems to be the one that I prefer for that type of environment, right? But there's other tools like Notebook LM. That one's kind of neat, actually. You guys need to play with that because it will give you very good information in an audio format, versus something that you have to spend hours trying to find yourself by reading website, right? I probably wouldn't do a podcast on the government website unless you put maybe a page. You could probably get a podcast that talks about a specific page on the website. Yes, that would make sense. But government website are too large, that it would take forever to create something of value. Okay. I think that's it. I think, Amanda, we could finish this here today.
I was muted. I was muted. Thank you so much. This has been, I didn't know about Notebook LM, so that's also something I can use personally, and I'm pretty sure everybody that attended this got so much from this. session. Thank you so much. If you guys have a chance, please check out the Neil Squire Society website. There is more information on other assistive technology tools. And yeah, if anybody has questions after this, please email them to me or Fola, and I can send them out to Charles. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.